As far as the response goes, every company's tackling a little bit different, and it depends on a couple different variables.
Don't conduct your analysis in isolation because data is so incredibly powerful.
Not defending just the tribe, but defending the organization.
Those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking.
A good experience pays dividends down the line.
Stereotypes tend to break down in proximity.
Welcome to We're Only Human, a podcast about human resources, business, technology, and the workplace. My name is Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. Hey everyone, it's Ben Eubanks, host of We're Only Human. I'm really glad to have you here. And I know a lot of companies right now are struggling. Some people are hurting. People are wondering what's next, what's happening, how they can kind of get a grip on what's happening. And so today I actually have a representative from Paycor here. We're going to talk about what they're seeing in the marketplace, what they're hearing from their customers, how they're dealing with these things. And so I'd love to welcome Brett Meager to the podcast. Welcome, Brett.
Hey, thanks, Ben. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So before we dive in and hear some of those things that I've already kind of promised everybody they're going to hear, tell us a little about Brett, who you are, what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so as we established, my name is Brett Meager, and I joined the team at Paycor this past December in the role of Senior Vice President for Client Service and Loyalty. So in my role, I lead Paycor's service and support as well as our success teams. We're basically laser focused on developing and promoting customer engagement within our community. So prior to joining Paycor, I led leadership positions at companies like NCR Corporation, Alight Solutions, and several other firms in the technology sector.
Awesome. And you mentioned to me a minute ago before we started recording, you have a couple kids. What do you do when you're not at work?
That's right. So, well, right now, I think we were sharing notes a few moments ago about how they're all a bit of a blur right now, right? And so that's the reality for most folks these days. I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old. My family just moved from the Atlanta area back when I took this role with Paycor up to Cincinnati, Ohio, where we're based. In the Norwood neighborhood of Cincinnati. So we live outside in the suburbs of that, kind of metropolitan Cincinnati area. And we're well on our way to meeting neighbors and learning the new surroundings when we got quarantined. So my days right now are spent really in juggle mode. It's a little bit of you're making sure someone is fed and someone is homeschooled and all of those things. We're getting outdoor and getting fresh air and trying to keep some level of normalcy for our family, but at the same time really navigating our business continuity and response for Paycor, as well as how do we respond in the best way possible for the tens of thousands of clients we work with. So to say things have been a little bit hectic since we moved is probably a bit of an understatement right now.
Goodness gracious, the things that you didn't think you'd have to deal with when you joined up. They say, taking a new job or, changing, selling your house or getting married, like those are big things that mark your life. And you've had a couple of those already this year, plus this on top of it. So, all right.
Let's keep it down in the books for sure.
You'll never, ever forget. So let's shift gears a little bit. I'd love to hear from you. Again, as you said a minute ago, it's your goal to kind of stay on the pulse of what's happening with your customers. I know Paycor serves hundreds, maybe thousands of customers. I have no idea the number actually. I'd love for you to answer that for me in a minute. But what are you hearing from those customers right now? What's on their minds?
Yeah, absolutely. So Paycor represents and works in the HCM space. We do payroll processing as well as a lot of the ancillary products that surround that to ensure that HR professionals and leaders are taken care of. We work with tens of thousands of companies actually across the U.S. Most of them are small and mid-sized businesses, which are highly impacted right now with what's going on in the world of COVID-19. And candidly, we actually process payroll for those companies for millions of employees that work for those companies. So right now we have line of sight and are directly watching what's happening with millions of folks across the US who are either getting paychecks or not getting paychecks, depending on the responses of these companies. So it's many of those that we work with are in highly impacted areas like hospitality and tourism areas, as well as healthcare providers and manufacturers. So just a broad swath of industries are represented across those companies that we work with. And it's interesting to see how those responses are starting to take shape industry by industry.
So let's dig into that if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
I don't know if there's such thing as an average company. Based on all the research we do, like everyone is a little bit unique in what they're doing, but I know that industries can kind of allow us to bucket those companies and see some similarities. Right now, travel is hurting, healthcare is exploding, retail is kind of in a weird space where the e-commerce side is really ramping up, but some other stuff is not so much. So I'd love to hear from you. How are companies like that's the business side of it? How are companies responding to this? What's happening? What are you hearing? Again, in terms of how companies are trying to help their people survive this or overcome it or get through it?
Yeah, so let me answer that kind of in two different ways. I'd love to share a little bit about what we're hearing, but then also what we're doing to interact with those clients that we work with and our response, because I think it gives a nice living example for HR professionals out there that are trying to wrap their head around what this means to their company. So you led by asking, what does average look like as a response? And candidly, I don't know that we've seen average just yet. The reality is that we're all adjusting to a moving target, our company included to that. No matter the size or the industry, I think everyone right now is taking it day by day to assess the strategies and behaviors to actually respond to the situation at hand. Go back in time a week or two ago, and as a global community, we didn't have nearly the emphasis on this as we do today. And so things are rapidly adjusting. And right now, I would say specifically in the US, there isn't an industry or even a person that hasn't been impacted by the pandemic and giving an effect to them. As far as the response goes, every company's tackling a little bit different that we would see that we interact with. And it depends on a couple different variables, depending on their cash flow situation, the scale of the impact, so that industry that they serve perhaps, or the way that consumers or their own clients are interacting with them, as well as candidly their appetite for risk. So sometimes that cash flow and appetite for risk allow them to move in a different strategic direction at this point than, say, a business that may look the same on the outside. The one thing we can say globally is that being proactive and timely in the response is what's key. So sitting and ducking our heads in the sand, pretending like this isn't going to impact us, that's not even a strategy these days. We all just have to recognize that we have to move forward. And not only do we have to move forward with a strategy, we have to communicate and bring others along with us. That means our employees, our clients, those that interact with the firm, to make sure that we're able to just sort of organize that chaos as much as possible to stay ahead on the communication front and to be a voice of reason in all the noise. So we're actually hearing three main themes that you might consider sort of the average responses from our clients. The first one is a need to stay informed. We need to make sure we're educated on the changing legislation, guidelines, relief related to the pandemic, and how technology is enabling or adapting to that. So we're getting a lot of calls into our contact center and into our teams of professionals every day asking, what exactly does that mean for me? Help me personalize what I'm hearing on the news as just an individual sitting in my own home, right? What does that mean to me as a business owner? Help me understand that and unpack that. So that's hugely powerful and hugely important right now. And again, a moving target. A second theme we're hearing is a need to deploy their workforce in creative and new ways, such as allowing for flexible schedules for those with children or others that they serve as the caregiver for, the need to work from home. That allows for and requires a whole different set of skills, or perhaps preparing a workforce that just doesn't necessarily exist for a lot of small and mid-sized employers. I would say even for us, we run a contact center and support team of hundreds of associates, and we picked up and had to deploy them in a new way outside of an office. So it really stretched us to think creatively about how we use our telephony systems and how we use technology in new ways. It's definitely something that we're hearing, not just from our own teams and those that we interact with, but also for that larger client base. And the third thing we're hearing is a need to communicate almost constantly about the changes going on. You know, there's a delicate balance there of being responsive to the things that we're hearing and needing to adjust to, and making sure employees know what's going on in their business, but then over communicating to a point where it becomes almost a white noise that they begin to drone out. And so helping our clients find that healthy balance and find new ways to, you know, not be able to put things on that bulletin board in the break room anymore, but to remind them of important things related to their payroll or their HR solutions, their benefits, in ways that necessarily don't allow us to connect face to face. That's a very interesting theme that we're hearing from clients that, again, we're trying to help them with and ensure that we can conquer.
That's been one of the trends in the conversations I've had with other employers and HR leaders in the last week or so is we're trying to walk that line, like you were saying, between I've got to keep them as up to date as possibly can. You know, in the absence of information, there's uncertainty, there's fear. So if we can provide some level of information, that helps to alleviate that in some way. But they're also trying to avoid, like, we don't want to tell them too much because we don't even know all of the things yet that are going to happen, right? A new law is getting passed every day, it seems like. I'm trying to help support employers as we're going through this. And they're like, we need to make sure we understand and have everything ironed out and buttoned up before we start communicating some of those bigger, longer term things beyond this week, beyond today, so that we can make sure we have that stuff kind of in the right place.
Absolutely. And I would say it even stretches beyond into sort of the business process side of things, right? The way that someone is having to do their work at home, if they're fortunate enough to be able to do that within their company, looks and feels a whole lot different than when they were sitting in an office connecting with one another, right? It's using different technologies to video chat or to leverage email or chatting in a different way. And so even that has brought up a new layer of noise almost to retrain associates to do some of the things they were doing before, but in a very different technology lens than perhaps they did when they were sitting in a small office environment together. And so, you know, it really is a fine line of communicating what we can that are sure things like the process changes, but recognizing that, hey, some of this is also a trial and a test on what works for our business and what doesn't, as well as those sort of macroeconomic climate, you know, changes that we have as far as legislation and things of that nature. So it definitely is a bit of an overwhelming topic when you think about it, but it allows us a lot of opportunity to connect in new ways and really drive our business forward if we take advantage of this and really take it on with a proactive lens, for sure.
You know, as you're saying that, one thing kind of popped in my head is, for as long as I've been around this space, I have heard HR leaders, talent leaders saying, we want to be strategic. We want to be part, you know, of the business. We want to be partnered with the business, but they're always, for a lot of companies, they're still struggling. Like, how do I do that? But this change has suddenly thrust the way we work and kind of them as a source of information into the forefront. You know, someone that's, you know, head of sales probably isn't in charge of how we're going to get all of our people remote and how we're going to support them and how we're going to take care of them. So HR now has kind of a platform that they didn't have before to be able to show their value, to demonstrate how they're supporting the business, and to demonstrate that those things they're bringing to the table, when they might have been doing the exact same kind of things in terms of communication and everything before. It just was maybe under a couple of layers of management or other things. And so now they have this platform that they can use to kind of share that. Does that sound logical?
Absolutely. No time like the present, right? I would start by reminding our HR friends and leaders that candidly there is no reason to waste a crisis. And what I mean by that is this is the chance to shine as the thought leaders of the business. To exactly your point, where before there was a lot of noise or lots of decisions being made, this is a time where everyone in the business is turning and looking at the people leaders and to the HR professionals saying, help, what do we do? Don't you have a playbook for this? Right? And so I would say capitalize on that. And we've got to sometimes, take a deep breath and think about what's the best way to handle these situations, because they are completely uncharted. But at the same time, it absolutely allows us to move forward with things that perhaps were getting dusted, as a lower level priority before, things like being able to enable a work from home policy. I bet there's HR professionals out there that have been fighting that battle on the side of HR for a very long time. Well, guess what? No time like the present, right? Use this as the opportunity to really change and shift that topic to be, instead of, a crisis response, let's take it a different way and move the business forward, right? So there's tons of good that can come out on the other side of this. It's just all about how we strategically weather that storm and make the most use of the crisis at hand.
So strategically weathering that storm, I'm going to ask you for some advice, if you have any, in terms of practical tips or anything else. People that are listening to this, while you think about that question, one of the things that's been in the back of my mind for the last week or two is I am generally plugged into what's happening in the broader world. I pay attention to the news in terms of our industry. I've watched social media. I'm connected to a bigger community, but I know a lot of people in our space are not as connected in. And so they're the ones that when this all started happening, I'm like, I wonder how they're going to, respond to this, what they're going to do, how they're going to survive. And so I've heard from some people that have actually started listening to the show that I've never listened before, or started reading new things or connecting with new people because they're looking to be plugged in. They realized how out of touch they were with what's happening in the broader world. And so I think, to echo what you were saying a minute ago, this can bring some good things out of it as long as we kind of cement those behaviors and that becomes the new normal for us. But I'll keep on keeping on if I don't stop. So any advice from you on what businesses can do, what HR leaders can do right now to, I don't know if it's just for sanity's sake or for just something specific they can do to help as they're going through this challenge. Whatever advice you can offer, I'm sure they appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the thing when you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, what should I be doing right now that I'm not doing? Or how should our business be responding to make sure, I view it as my personal charter to make sure that we are able to process payroll in a uniform and compliant fashion for all of the millions of people out there that are counting on our business to do just that. We deal with a mission critical product in that we help businesses pay their people. And if we don't do that right, people don't get paychecks. Families are, struggling as a result of that. And so I look at this as absolutely what could we and should we be doing as Paycor, as business leaders, as HR sector, define it how you like. But I think from a business perspective, it's critically important for HR and for finance leaders right now to partner together. I said that a moment ago that you have to have a strategy, and putting our head in the sand and pretending like this isn't going to happen is absolutely not a strategy. The finance and HR teams have to partner together right now. And maybe for a small business, that's one and the same. Maybe for a larger organization, those are two separate leaders or two separate functions. They have to partner together to control costs across the business and to make sure that they can create a strategic plan to move forward. And so when I say that, it's a strategic plan that's not just driven by the financial outcomes, but also on what is the business going to look like through this and on the other side of that. The communication layers that are, embedded in that are heavy. There's a lot of meat below that on the communication side, because I think that when the business side really challenges themselves to think about things differently, it kicks off all sorts of communication strings, just like we were talking about earlier, to make sure you're bringing others along through that. The other advice I would give is from a people perspective right now. Employees are in a heightened state of anxiety. Watch the news, right? And you see that furloughs are happening in businesses, or cuts and reductions are being taken. Businesses are not able to operate in this environment. And that's a really unfortunate side effect of what's going on. And we know that over time it will be eased and recover. But right now is a time where we have to make sure that we're keeping the people motivated and at ease with high team morale as much as possible. It's very easy to feel isolated when you're working remote or you're not working in that same function. We are creatures of habit. And when that runs dry or doesn't work in the same way that we're used to, it's incredibly difficult on the individual. So we need to, as business leaders, make sure that we acknowledge that. We need to look for fun and silly ways to connect and make sure that we're rallying our teams together. One of the teams that I work with very closely, our support leaders have started a Friday afternoon Zoom happy hour. And we take our normal stand-up meeting, and everybody, I've seen everything from silly costumes to the Easter Bunny made a cameo appearance, where everybody's on Zoom chat, and we're just taking it to a level of humor and fun that we would have had in an office environment, but we just aren't getting in that day-to-day world where we're all sitting in front of a laptop in our own kitchens or offices around town. And so I think that bringing some fun and humor is incredibly important. And then I would say that my third point or thought on that is that we have to, from a human perspective, just give a little grace. I think I shared earlier that I'm the mom to a 4 and 8-year-old, and I am no teacher in any traditional sense. However, as of a week ago, I am now officially adding homeschool elementary teacher to my resume, right? And so we are all trying to figure out and navigate, how do you keep children not just occupied, but educated and doing things that are healthy and balanced and good for their well-being, at the same time that we're trying to drive a business forward. And so I think that can only happen with a little grace. We just have to make sure that we're balancing that and realizing we really can't script this normal that we're living in at the time. And if your city is anything like where we are in Cincinnati, and like I said, from Atlanta, I have quite a few friends still in that area, and my family's still there, I would tell you that the toilet paper shortage alone is enough to tell us that we need to give each other a little bit of grace right now, because someone somewhere has a closet full of toilet paper, and the rest of us are all still trying to figure out what we're going to do in a couple days when our supply runs out, right? So we just need to have a little humor and grace about it, and realize that we've got to have a plan, but we have to be pliable and adaptable through this.
Definitely have to be adaptable. There was the grace comment reminded me. I had a discussion earlier today with a friend who I haven't talked to in a long time, and one of the things I've started doing over the last couple of weeks is reaching out to those people who you always say, "Hey, yeah, let's catch up," and then you never quite get around to it.
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
I've had 4 or 5 of those calls in the last couple of weeks, and it's been so much fun to talk to them. But one of the people I spoke with today, that was one of our takeaways, was at the end of this, when there is some return to whatever normal looks like after this is done, the hope is that we don't stop extending that grace, because we realize that at the end of the day, all of us are still very human. It's easy to forget those things when someone shows up in the office and that they're that work person that and they're the bundle of skills that you've hired. But at the end of the day, they're still a person. And I think that ties in really well, not just the having some humor, the advice you gave there, but also the pieces we talked about all through the conversation today, where there are some people who are worried about their pay and other things. And don't forget that aspect of we're all human. We all have these basic things that at the end of the day, if we don't have those, we're worried about. And that's just a really great way to put it. So I love the remote happy hour thing. I'll have to figure out how we can pull one of those off, because that would be fun. But I'm with you though on the costume thing. I have a giant dinosaur head right here on my desk that I've been using for random meetings when I feel like somebody needs a smile, and I'll bring the smile, you bring a laugh, and you'll end up, a little bit better blood pressure after you get off the call with me, and we'll call it a win.
There you go. There you go. I think we may see a run on, costume heads. As long as this keeps up, we may all need it for our sanity before too long, for sure.
Oh, goodness. Brett, this has been so insightful, so helpful. I really appreciate you taking some time for us today. If someone wants to connect with you or learn more about what Paycor is doing in general, or how you're responding to this for your customers, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you don't mind, may I share a couple of the things that we're doing to kind of adjust to this new normal for our customers? Because I think it gives a nice living example. And then I can close out with, sharing a little bit more about where to find more of this information. I think it's a really kind of meaty response that we've had at Paycor from our marketing team. And I think it's really helpful for those listening.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, we were talking earlier about the themes and the new normals and what does it mean to have an average response right now? And I think, I shared a couple of themes that we're seeing, but if we take it a step further, there's a couple things that our company as, thought leaders in the HCM space has done to help prepare not just our clients, but also those just in the community that are looking for education. And I think that that's a really important thing right now. I know that, Ben, you guys have put together a great list of support and information that's available to just the general public and to HR leaders that are looking for more information. We've done something sort of similar, but with a bit of a different bend to it. We know that there's a huge need for education right now. And a lot of our customers are calling us to say, I don't quite understand what this means for me. What exactly does it mean when we're asked to implement X, right? And I say X generally because I think that there will be other things that this applies to in the future. So we've created a forum called the COVID Support Center for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses. You can link to it from our website, paycor.com, where readers can find information like articles. There's a ton of webinars, communication templates, and things that they can use across their business that are just free resources for them. It's tons of thought leadership. A lot of hours have gone into this from many, many professionals across the industry that can help business leaders, specifically in small and mid-sized companies, either find a template to use that helps them communicate better with some of these situations that we talked about today, or also just find some more thought leadership to challenge them to think about things in a new way. We took it a step further by also including, the team has done a great job of, that topic of, I'm knowing all too well, moonlighting as mom and homeschool teacher right now, of when you're working from home and you're a caregiver, it's giving new meaning to work-life balance. And so our team published on social media an article just recently called How to Work from Home with Kids. And it includes lots of great tips and pointers. A lot of them are just candidly really practical things. And much like what you said, Ben, of, I hope that some of this grace persists on the other side of this. These are just things that we all probably know we should have been doing it, but you get so busy in your day-to-day that you kind of slack on some of these things. So it's things like how to set a schedule for yourself and for your kids, ensuring that you're communicating well with your manager about the reality of your home situation, and just some great resources like that of how to have the tough conversation with your partner or with your manager or, with your family about what this schedule looks like for your family. We actually implemented a family schedule this week, and it's already been a game changer. I can tell you, like, the kids love that they get to see and pick their color of what they're supposed to be doing all day. And they've actually realized the hours where they can't bother mom because she's doing things like talking with you. And so it's actually, knock on all the wooden things, it's actually working. They haven't come in today. So, we know that these things are all good best practices. And, I just think that they're really helpful tips for everyone working in these non-normal situations right now. And then lastly, I would just share that on the product front, we were a first mover on some feature changes that allowed for the response to some of the new legislation and aligning our product to support the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Try saying that 3 times fast, by the way, to help our clients manage all of the changes, including like the earning and accrual codes for tax credit tracking. And we've worked really swiftly to add some new functionality within our application to allow HR leaders to mass communicate with their team with push notifications. So just some great things there. Again, it's sort of challenging all of us. And I would say from a product perspective, we're absolutely taking full advantage of the crisis by rolling out some features that, push notifications is a great example of one that we probably would have eventually gotten to, but it wasn't the top of the heap, coolest, priority for our product team to work on. But there became a new market demand, and we were able to, push that forward, and we're launching that this week. So it's really exciting stuff just to see how quickly teams are able to, align themselves to a priority, jump on a new problem statement that didn't exist a couple days ago, and really rapidly iterate and respond. And so I just think that really speaks volumes to what we can do when we put our minds to it and focus on having a strategy forward and making sure that we're taking this in stride, recognizing that no one planned for it, but we all have to respond to it. So just to end up with that topic, I would share that to learn more about what we're doing at Paycor and the thought leadership, there's links from our website, as well as on all the social platforms. You can find our team representing under the Paycor handle. It's a big orange logo, so if you get lost or confused, just look for the sort of sideways chevron in orange, and that's us. So lots of thought leadership going in on LinkedIn and on Twitter and on all of the social networks for that regard. I personally am on LinkedIn at Brett Meager, and you can follow me there, and we can friend up, and you can send any questions that way if there's any more advice or information that I can share about what we're doing at Paycor or how we are helping small businesses.
All right, perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping for, and I love that you shared that. I'm going to go read the How to Work from Home with Kids for any other tips or advice or secrets that I might not know. Just when you think you know it all, someone else has another like super amazing tips. You're like, I never knew that, but that would change my life. So I'm going to make sure and dig into that one too. I'll make sure and get links to the resources you mentioned into the show notes for the episode, so that they're out there and available. Anyone else wants to dig into those, they'll be right there in the show notes. They can click right through from that versus having to do the old Google thing and search around. So make sure we get those set there. Brett, again, this has been so much fun. I really appreciate your time very much. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and hang in there the next few weeks. I hope to bump elbows with you sometime soon on the other side of this.
Awesome. Thank you very much. To everybody else, this has been another episode of We're Only Human. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm honored to have you as a listener. If you enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you know a friend that could benefit from today's conversation, please pass it their way. After all, a rising tide lifts all ships. To see show notes, sponsor information, and our full show archives, visit onlyhumanshow.com.